The movie opens with a car pulling up to a house. A little girl notices the car parked outside of her house and heads out to check it out. She notices a small black figure sitting in the car. She hears a whisper and looks around but finds no one. Suddenly, a man appears beside her. He calls her the almost birthday girl and mentions wearing his long legs today.
It seems I wore my long legs today.
The movie flashes to the present, which is the 1990s Oregon, America. We meet our protagonist, Special Agent Lee Harker, of the FBI. Lee is in a meeting where the head of the FBI briefs the agents about an armed suspect and assigns them to knock on doors in the suburbs for questioning regarding him. Lee is partnered with Detective Horatio Fisk. They arrive at a quiet neighborhood where Lee notices a house and senses something strange. She tells Horatio that she's certain the suspect is hiding inside that house. Horatio thinks she's wrong, so he knocks on the door. The resident opens the door and shoots Horatio. Lee realizes she was right and heads inside. The entire house is covered with plastic sheets. She goes upstairs and sees the killer sitting in his bedroom, surrendering willingly. Now, Lee undergoes a psychological evaluation at the FBI. She's shown different abstract pictures and required to answer whatever comes to her mind first. Later on, we are introduced to Agent Carter and Agent Browning, two senior agents at the FBI. They are outside of the house of a recently murdered family of 4. Carter briefs Lee that they found a letter inside the house, written in coded alphabets. This letter was similar to the ones they found in the 10 previously slaughtered family cases over the past 30 years, and all of them were signed with one word, long legs, in the same handwriting. He mentions that it's always the father in the murders that finishes everyone then ends his own life. So the mystery remains. Who writes the letters? And how do they escape without any trace? Carter brings Lee to his office and shows her the recent Longlegs case. Lee questions what is common in all the families, which is that all of the daughters in the families have a birthday on the 14th of any given month. Lee now gets to work in her office, trying to decode the alphabets while listening to the 911 call of the dad before he attacked his family.
911, what's your emergency?
It's my daughter. But it's not my daughter.
Sir, who's not your daughter?
At night, Lee falls asleep in her office, and Carter wakes her up. They both head to a bar for drinks while discussing the case. Lee informs him that she believes Longlegs manipulates people into slaying each other, and must have some accomplices, otherwise it seems like an occult case. Carter is now quite drunk and is very late, so Lee decides to drop him off at his house. Carter introduces Lee to his wife Anna and his little daughter Ruby. Ruby takes Lee to show her room. Anna now tells Ruby to sleep so Lee can leave. Ruby agrees and invites Lee to her birthday, which is soon. Lee drives back home and calls her mom, Ruth, to catch up with her. Lee hears someone outside and ends the call. She hears a loud bang on her door, so she goes to check, but no one answers. She looks out of her window and sees a horned, shadowy figure. Lee heads outside with her gun to check, but finds no one. Instead, she notices someone walking inside her house. She heads back in and finds no one, except an envelope with her name on it. Lee carefully opens the envelope and finds a birthday card from Longlegs because Lee's birthday is also on the 14th of the current month. She starts decoding the coded alphabets and realizes it's a death threat about her mother. She gets a call from work and next morning arrives at the crime scene of another Longlegs case. The victims are a family of 3, but the FBI discovered their corpses a month late. Their case is the same. The daughter's birthday is on a 14th, and the dad slayed his family, only to off himself later in their garage. After seeing their rotten corpses, Lee immediately calls her mom to check up on her. At night, she researches the previous Longlegs cases and lists down the murder dates. She notices a pattern, which turns out to be the satanic symbol from biblical scriptures. She hears a thud and notices the horned shadow figure again. The next day, she presents her findings to Carter. She explains that Longlegs makes his move through an algorithm, which is to murder the families 6 days before their daughter's birthday. She mentions decoding his previous letters, where he often mentions the Camera family and their daughter, Carrie Ann, who survived the attack because she was at school when Longlegs came to her farmhouse. Lee mentions Carrie Ann is admitted to a psychiatric hospital, so they decide to visit her for questioning. They arrive at Carrie Ann's abandoned farmhouse first. Lee and Carter look around and head upstairs, where they find a cross placed on the floor. They open the floor and find a box. Carter opens the box and uncovers a wax doll. They bring it to their forensics lab, where the scientist tells them that he discovered an iron ball in the doll's head. He mentions hearing the ball emitting weird sounds, as if it were saying his ex-wife's name. Now we see Longlegs with the same doll, whom he calls Carrie Ann, and covers it. Longlegs drives to a utility store to buy groceries. There he acts crazy and freaks out the cashier. He drives back while singing satanic songs. Carter and Lee visit the hospital, where the owner mentions Carrie Ann never having a visitor ever since she was admitted until 2 days ago. He shows them his entry log, and the visitor signed in under Lee's name. Lee questions Carrie Ann alone and asks her if she remembers her parents, and we see a flashback. There's a terrifying-looking doll at her house, and it makes her parents go mad. Later that day, their local priest arrives at their house for his weekly visit, but his dad attacks him with his axe and his wife. Lee asks Carrie Ann about her visitor, and she mentions feeling delighted after meeting him, and she'll do anything he wants her to do, even if he tells her to jump from the window. Lee asks if she saw her doll, but she doesn't remember, and asks Lee if she remembers her doll. Lee is confused. On the other hand, we see Longlegs sitting in his home while the Shadowhorn figure appears at his place. Back at the FBI, Carter wonders why Longlegs visited Carrie Ann 20 years after killing her family. Lee starts believing they are dealing with a supernatural situation due to a doll's involvement, but Carter doesn't believe it. He asks Lee how Longlegs knows her name and wonders if Lee is hiding something. He asks if she saw Longlegs in her childhood because in 1974, a year before Carrie Ann's parents died, Ruth made a call about an intruder, tall and pale. Carter asks if Lee saw someone like that in her house, but she doesn't remember. So Carter tells her to visit her mom and ask her. Lee now visits her mom, Ruth, and catches up with her. Lee's mom is a little off too, so she finds packed teeth in the kitchen. She notices teeth next to a locked door, while the horn figure appears outside the window again. She starts to remember her mom on her 9th birthday, and asks her if a trespasser broke in. Her mom denies remembering any trespasser and says, little children aren't allowed to know everything. Lee argues she's not a child, but Ruth says she only grew up because she was allowed to. Lee doesn't understand, so she heads to her room upstairs and goes through her old stuff. There she finds some pictures and gets shocked when she sees a picture of Longlegs. It is revealed the little girl was Lee in the beginning of the movie, and she photographed Longlegs. Lee remembers her mom intervening and asking Longlegs to leave before he started threatening her while singing. The next day, Lee hands his photo to Carter and requests a man hunt for him. Longlegs is planning on escaping, but the FBI arrives on time and arrests him. They bring him into custody and watch his interview. He reveals his real name, which is Dale Ferdinand Cobble. Cobble asks when he can see Lee and starts wishing her birthday continuously. Carter dismisses everyone and discusses alone with Lee and Browning. Browning mentions they don't have any physical evidence of murders linking to Cobble, so Lee assumes he had an accomplice that the families would be comfortable with. Lee remembers Cobble mentioning a friend from downstairs, so she now decides to meet Cobble herself and interrogate him. She asks him who's his accomplice, and he mentions a nun that knocks on doors and reveals the family won a free prize from the church. Lee asks who's his friend from downstairs, but he tells her to ask her mother and bashes his head on the table and ends his life. Lee now heads to her mom's house with Browning to interrogate her. Lee looks inside the house and notices the locked room is opened. Meanwhile, Ruth is standing outside, behind Browning's car. Lee hears gunfire and looks out of the window where she sees her mom shooting Browning. Lee goes outside and looks for her mom, and finds her standing next to Lee's doll. She tells Lee she's free and shoots the doll's head. Lee's head releases black smoke as she slowly becomes unconscious. In a flashback, Lee's mom narrates how Cobble used his satanic dark magic to make his evil dolls. The dolls would make the little girls forget what they saw so they could be sacrificed to the devil. But Ruth made a deal to spare Lee's life, hence allowing her to grow. She decided to work with Cobble as a nun to take his dolls to families as a gift from church, along with his letters. Lee now wakes up in Cobble's lair. She walks out and realizes Cobble was hiding downstairs in Ruth's house all this time. She hears the phone ring, and upon answering, a demonic voice tells her about Ruby's birthday. Lee runs outside and finds Cobble's car in the garage. She drives to Ruby's house, where Carter and Anna seem relaxed. Lee enters their house and sees Ruby's doll along with Ruth already sitting there. She tries to explain to Carter that Ruth is the accomplice, but he's already hypnotized by the doll. Carter and Anna go to the kitchen while Lee asks Ruth to end this. Ruth reveals if they stop, they will burn in hell. Lee hears Carter stabbing Anna in the kitchen and enters the hall to attack them, but Lee shoots him. Ruth tries to attack Lee, but she shoots her as well. Lee separates Ruby from the doll and tries to shoot it, but she's out of bullets. She decides to leave while we see Cobble laughing, and the movie ends here. Thank you for being a part of our video. If these tales of mystery and intrigue sent shivers down your spine, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more bone-chilling narratives. Stay tuned. And until next time, stay captivated.